All right. Then hello, everybody, and a warm welcome to this AI update session. In this session, I would like to give you an overview of just some recent developments in the AI landscape that may be interesting and relevant for you and your work. And just as a disclaimer, this is not designed as a hands-on workshop today. So we will not go through exercises together, and it will also not really be an interactive session. Instead, this is more of a guided update, I would say. So I will walk you through a number of developments, explain what they mean, and most importantly, discuss why they may matter for you and also for your work. Before we start, let me briefly mention a couple of things. Today's session is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to you afterwards. So you can rewatch it, or if you have to leave sooner, you can check out the rest. You can also share it internally if that is useful to you. And then one more thing, a warning actually. I have this morning since 8 o'clock, so in the last hour, I have experienced 2 internet crashes at home already. It doesn't seem to be in our house, so it must be somewhere else. Now I've just checked with people who sit in Turin and they don't have internet problems there, obviously. I just keep my fingers crossed and I have a higher heart rate during the next hour or so to hope that everything works out, just in case. If we should all be kicked out due to internet problems here at my place, I already apologize. And I would suggest that we go with the following procedure. We try to get in again once and once only. So about 10 minutes of trying to make it back. And if that does not work, then stop trying. And I then also stop trying. And instead, I will sit down and record the video for you as a pure video and send it to you, upload it and send it to you. So this way you can also still watch it. You don't miss anything. And also you don't waste your time and energy trying to get on or have me get on. Okay, so let's keep our fingers crossed that the internet connection remains stable. Good. So the aim for today is that you get a hopefully clearer sense of what is currently changing in AI, where the developments could be useful for your own workflow and for you, where you need to be careful, especially when it comes to confidential information. So that might be unpublished research results, partner data, intellectual property issues, or organizational knowledge and that kind of thing. And today is not going to be an AI tool shower, so to speak. So I will not go over tons of different, maybe useful tools that have popped up over the last weeks and months. Instead, because of the very recent event of Anthropic's Fable 5 that I consider to be truly a major development. A second. So because of this recent event, I would like to keep it more on a broader perspective today. And the central idea that I would like you to keep in mind is that AI is moving from chatbots to work systems and agentic AI. We'll talk about agentic AI today, especially towards the end. That's what I planned. And not too long ago, most people still thought of generative AI mainly as a chatbot. So you open a tool, you type in a question, you get an answer, that kind of thing, maybe ask for improvement of a paragraph, summarize a text. And all of that, of course, is still there and it's all still super useful. But it is, of course, no longer the whole story. What we now see is a shift towards agentic AI, so towards AI tools that are way more deeply connected to your actual work and to your work infrastructure, that is your computer. So AI tools that can actually truly access your files and work with your files structure and work with your documents, support your coding, transcribe speech, help you with meetings, connect with internal knowledge sources, compare and create tables and documents and that sort of things, prepare slides for you, and carry out multi-step tasks as real agents. So this is kind of like what we're talking about, but I'd like to start out with this Anthropic Fable 5 incident, because yeah, as I said, I think it's a really major thing. The structure for today will be, letting people who are not there. I will start with the larger shift that we're currently seeing in AI. So this move from the simple chatbot to a more integrated AI work system. And then we will look at changes that Mistral has undergone. And here the key question is not only what the tool can do, but also, and probably mainly so, what it may offer in terms of data sovereignty. And control and European AI infrastructure. And that again is connected to the Fable 5 incident. And after that, I would like to move on to local AI and talk about that. I believe that this is really relevant and hopefully interesting for you. It has become, I guess, very clear that not all research material should be copied into a public cloud chatbot. So we will talk about what it means when AI runs not in a cloud, but on your own device. That is called local AI, and we're going to look into this because there have been some major changes as well over the last couple of months. I would like then to introduce two useful AI tools related to voice transcription and meeting support. They're Type Whisper and Hedi. And both these tools are local AI tools. And they show again that AI is moving closer to your computer and to your everyday workflow, not only when it comes to writing, but also when it comes to capturing ideas, discussions, and follow-up actions. And the last topic, as I already pointed it out, will be about AI agents. I specifically will talk about a cool beginner's tool for an agent, namely ChatGPT's Codex. And if you like, we can try out a task in Codex together and just see how it goes and what it does, and watch what it does. And also we could try out Comet, which is Perplexity's agentic browser, if that's interesting for you. AI agents is certainly one of the most important developments at the moment, because agents move from simply answering questions to really working through multi-step tasks and doing that autonomously, working with your files and tools and checks. Yeah, and that's the plan for today. I would also like to point out here that I do not work with PowerPoint slides or anything like this, so I'll just be talking to you. But I do have various materials that afterwards, when you get the video, you will also get a PDF deck with different slides with information on it, the core information that I produced with Notebook LM, a short video that summarizes the major elements, and I have two PDFs that I thought might be useful for you. One is about free versus paid AI tools and what they can do for you, so just to check out different options that are available out there. And the second one is about AI agents and giving you ideas what kind of agents are out there and what could you possibly do with them, right? But let's start with a major development that is really important regarding AI infrastructure as such. And that is the case of Anthropic's Fable 5. Fable 5 was presented as one of Anthropic's most advanced models. It was part of a new generation of super, super powerful AI systems that could support complex work that included agentic workflows and coding related tasks and advanced document work. But shortly after its release, something unheard of happened. In simple, so like very, very, very simple terms, the US government ordered Anthropic to restrict access to Fable 5 for foreign nationals. So not just foreign countries, but foreign nationals even within the US. And that means the issue was no longer about where a person was located, but it was about their nationality. Anthropic was thus eventually forced to disable access to the Fable 5 for all its users, right? Because it could not distinguish that. So from one moment to the next, access to the AI model was removed. Now, I don't want to turn this into a political discussion, and I do not want to pretend that the security questions, that they are simple. Advanced AI systems can, of course, create real risks, especially when they are used for cyber-related tasks or for other sensitive areas. And governments will clearly become more involved in regulating powerful AI systems. But the point is that for us as users, this case is important for another reason. It clearly shows that AI tools are not only technical products anymore. They are also, and mainly so, geopolitical infrastructure. And if your workflow depends on AI systems that run in the US or, say, China, same problem there, and that these systems can be restricted or switched off by a government decision, then this becomes a problem. It becomes a serious risk to us here in Austria and Europe. Imagine you built your complex workflows around an AI tool, and then suddenly access is denied. And it's not denied because you did anything wrong, but because of a political or regulatory decision somewhere in another country. It means that you are immediately denied access. It means that you lose access to all the data that you already have, that you've worked with and that you've created. And that is also the case even if you're a paying customer. And what might seem like some random political decision should be, I think, actually very, very alarming. It should be a wake-up call for us here in Europe to truly start to build or work on building a way more independent AI infrastructure within Europe. Currently, if you think about it, pretty much all the really good, the really powerful AI tools that we commonly use sit in the US and probably in China. And there is hardly anything going on here within Europe. And as we've seen in real life, these AI tools can be shut down in an instant and without any warning. And yeah, this brings me to Mistral. I put that in the chat as well. Mistral. Mistral is an AI tool that you most likely have already heard of. It is somewhat of like the European answer to ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude. And it has become one of the most visible European players in generative AI. And I think it's worth mentioning here not only because it at that point plays in somewhat the same league as ChatGPT and Gemini. ChatGPT and Gemini are probably a little bit better, more powerful regarding its output, but I would say it's good quality. But also because it raises the large question of sovereignty, right? So for us, I think the question is not only how and where do we get good answers from AI tools, but also do we care about where the data goes, who controls the infrastructure, under which legal framework does a system operate, how much control do we have over what we use and eventually also pay for. And I think it has become clear that just relying on US-based technology companies might be problematic, especially if it's related to not just your private, like write this email for me, but on a larger scale when it comes to research work and so on. And we use AI for that. And maybe also let me point out that there is nothing wrong with using tools like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini for your everyday tasks, right? They're extremely powerful, they're useful, they're super productive. But as I said, when it comes to research, especially when you more rely on it working with you and for you, then decisions are, of course, more complex. It's not only about which AI gives me the best answer, but a question that now is way more prominent than it was, say, a couple of months ago is which AI environment is appropriate for my kind of data, my kind of work, and the sovereignty that I want to have. For example, if you use AI to improve regular project descriptions, or I brainstorm ideas for a presentation and that sort of things, then any kind of like cloud-based tool is perfectly fine. But especially when it comes to sensitive data, unpublished research results, internal reports, confidential partner information, project proposals that are not ready to leave the house and so on, then we want to be way more careful. And this is why and where European AI providers such as Mistral become interesting. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to oversimplify things here. It's not true that European AI automatically means everything is safe, everything is good. That would be too simple, mainly because data protection and data security, first and foremost, depends on us, on you and me, and what we put in the system, as well as specific tool settings and so on. So the message here is not Mistral is European, therefore we can put everything in it, and we should always use it for everything. The better message probably is Mistral may be an interesting option to explore when you're also interested in European data governance, data control, and AI sovereignty. And maybe I also quickly explain the word sovereignty here because it will come up more and more in AI discussions. Data sovereignty means that an organization or a country or a continent keeps meaningful control over its own data. And that includes questions such as, like, where the heck is this data stored? How and where is it processed? Who can access the data? How long is it kept? Can it be used to improve a model? Yes or no? Can it be deleted, for example? And these questions are central to trust, compliance, intellectual property, and collaboration with partners. So when we talk about Mistral, we're not only talking about another chatbot that you might want to try out. We're also talking about helping establish a European AI ecosystem that is trying to position itself around professional workflows. And there is a second reason why I'm bringing this up. So the one thing is this sovereignty and what happened with Fable 5. And the other thing is something recent that happened to Mistral. So if you say, well, I already checked out Mistral, say 6 months ago, and I was not totally thrilled by it, and that's why I'm not using it. It was the same case for me. But there have been changes. There's been one visible change related to Mistral that's a really massive change. And that is that Mistral's former chat tool called Le Chat has become Vibe. Let me type this into the system. So this is more than just a regular rebranding or renaming, but there is no more Mistral Le Chat, the chat function like ChatGPT. This is now called Vibe. And the name change reflects a larger trend in AI tools that means moving away from the simple chat interface and towards a real work environment using AI agents. What does this mean or look like? Well, a chatbot, as we already said, mainly answers questions, right? So that's what it does. A work-oriented AI system that also includes agentic AI helps you work through the tasks, and it works autonomously when you want it to do so. And that might sound like a small difference, but it is actually quite important. In a simple chatbot setting, I would ask a question, I get an answer, and then I decide what I want to do with the answer and how I want to proceed with it. In a work-oriented setting, just like Vibe, Mistral's Vibe now, the AI may help you structure documents, analyze spreadsheets, compare, extract information, create something new, so draft reports for you, for example, or prepare slides for you, and do several of these steps independently. So the shift from Le Chat to Vibe, I think, is a good example of the larger development that we're seeing and that we're discussing, namely the creation of unified agents for productivity and coding tasks. And in practice, this means that Vibe is now not only meant for quick chats, you can still do that, but it now also includes different modes for different kinds of work. There's still the chat mode for quick conversations, the way that Le Chat has worked in the past. But then there's something new, and that is called the work mode. And that is the interesting thing. That's for productivity tasks. And then there is also a code mode. This is especially for software and coding related work. But I suppose for many of us, the most interesting part that you might also want to explore and look into is the work mode. In simple terms, vibe work is designed for more complex productivity tasks. That is agendic, where you describe what you want to achieve, and then the system helps break the task into steps, gather relevant context on its own. It uses available tools and produces a result that you can then review. And that is different from simply asking, can you summarize this text for me? It's closer to saying, here is material, here's a folder, for example, and this is the outcome that I need and want. Help me work through the steps and show me the results in a useful format when you're done. So it functions like an agent, but within the European ecosystem. And I think that's the interesting thing. And if you now wonder what the heck are agents and so on, we'll talk about this later on today. So if this is new to you, don't worry, we'll talk about this. For now, to finish this off, let me suggest that you look into Mistral, and especially into Mistral Vibe and the work mode, and check those out and see if they might be good and interesting examples of sovereignty-aware AI tools for you, especially when it's more about sensitive information. And this brings me to another major development that I think is becoming more and more interesting and relevant, especially for researchers, and that is local AI. The basic question behind local AI is very simple, I would say, namely, does AI always have to run in the cloud? Just a couple of months ago, I would say the answer was very clear, very straightforward, and it was, well, if you want the result to be good, yes, you have to use a cloud system. But today, things are different. Things have developed drastically over the last couple of months. And today, I would say the answer to the question, does AI have to run in the cloud, is like, well, not necessarily. The tools, the local AI tools, have become so much better. And also the scale is relatively small and compact so that you can actually run it on a local PC. And when most people think of AI tools today, they think of like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, maybe Perplexity. And all these tools, they run in the cloud. So that means I type something into the web interface, my text is sent to the provider server that normally sits somewhere in the US. The model there processes the information and I get back an answer. And for many tasks, this is totally fine, totally legit. Cloud tools are often extremely powerful. They're convenient. They're super easy to use. But especially when you think of your research work, it's often the case that you work with materials, well, that should not casually leave your organization. And that might include unpublished results or internal project documents that you might have, maybe material testing data, partner information, meeting notes, grant applications that are not yet ready to be released, technical reports, early ideas, and the like. And this is exactly, for that kind of stuff, this is exactly where local AI now for the first time becomes really, really interesting, an interesting option, because it has improved so much recently. Local AI means that the AI runs on your own device. So instead of sending your prompt to an external cloud provider, the process happens locally on your computer. Now, local AI is not, of course, a magic solution, but it can reduce one important aspect, namely the risk of sensitive input that is then sent to somewhere else where you no longer have full control of what's happening to it. And if you now think back to sovereignty that we already discussed, then this really is an issue. And also like making sure that you can work with AI tools and use AI tools to support you for sensitive data. So specifically for your research, I think that can make a real difference. Let's probably imagine a practical situation. Say you have internal project notes from your last research meeting, and the notes include some early ideas and possible next steps, and maybe some partner-related information, some details about an experiment or materials. And all of this is not yet ready to be released to the public. And you would like to use AI to create a summary, identify action points, or structure the notes into a follow-up email for the people that you had your conversation with. Now, the question is not only can AI help me do this, but actually the better question is what kind of AI environment is appropriate for this sort of sensitive information. If it's public information, if it's non-sensitive, then using your regular AI tools is super fine, right? But in our case, the notes, we said they were internal. They're not yet ready to leave the organization. They might include confidential research data. And this is where a public AI chatbot is no longer a feasible solution. Local AI, however, is, because your information never leaves your computer. And that's the key idea. And as I pointed out here, we've seen some major developments recently. Local AI has become so much better and so much more practical. There are now tools that make local AI way more accessible and thus super interesting for research work and confidential information. I unfortunately cannot currently run a local AI on my computer because my Mac is too old for it. So that doesn't work. Otherwise, I would have liked to shown it to you. But I am already looking forward to the fall, and I will get myself a super new, brand new, powerful Mac. And then I'll certainly use local AI for sensitive information. So not for the rest. Everything that's not sensitive can go through the more powerful options that are available. If you already happen to have a rather recent and decent computer, you might want to look into local AI tools, just like GPT for all. I put this down, GPT for all. That would be one option, or LM Studio would be another option for a local AI, or maybe you have heard of Olama. All three these tools help you download and run language models locally. So where you don't have to be an expert, and you can keep the system on your computer, and then you can use AI tools also for super sensitive stuff. Inside these tools, no matter if it's GPT for all, LM Studio, or Olama, there sits the brain, so to speak. So the AI module that you can normally choose from. So within GPT for all, LM Studio, and Olama, within these tools, you then choose Mistral, Gemma, Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever program you don't want to work with. But everything runs locally on your computer. And I think it's also important to be realistic. So local AI, of course, is not automatically as powerful as the best cloud-based frontier model. It's not. However, it has become so good and good enough that you can do your Joe average jobs that need to be done when it comes to analyzing data and working with material, that you can do this with local AI. So that's the trend that we've seen over the last couple of months. And chances are that this will improve even more so in the near future, that local AI really is a key development that you want to look out for. Especially for things that need to stay with you, for data that must not leave your work environment. Also, by the way, it can also be used if you say you need something that's more powerful to work with your data and your local AI cannot do this. What you can do is you can use local AI to anonymize information or data, and then the anonymized data can be used safely in any open tool, say ChatGPT or the like. Another area where local AI is becoming very relevant and highly interesting to those of you who not only write a lot, but also talk a lot, is speech recognition and transcription. And if you think about it, a lot of research work happens through speaking. We talk through a project idea, we explain something to a colleague, we have lots and lots of meetings with partners, we reflect on what's just happening in a lab, a workshop, or project meeting. And all of this spoken thinking often disappears unless somebody writes it down. And local transcription tools can help you turn spoken language into text without necessarily sending the audio file to an external cloud server. So here I would like to highlight two actual AI tools. Both run locally on your computer. They're not super large, so they work on kind of like decent computers, and both are very good. I've seen both of them in action many times, and I'm super impressed by them. Again, unfortunately, my Mac is just way too old and cannot handle that kind of stuff. Otherwise, I would have shown you. But I invite you to check out these two options to see if you find them useful and just try them out for yourself. The first one is called Type Whisper. Type Whisper is a speech to text tool. It works locally, so on your computer, you download it, and it works excellently for Mac computers. So if you have a Mac, that's perfect. If you have a Windows computer, Type Whisper currently offers a beta version that is so-ish at this point. But it will improve, and it will improve quickly. So if you work on a Windows computer and you're interested in Type Whisper, you might just, take a note down, put it on your calendar and say 3 months and check it out. If it's then still a beta version, or if it has become a regular version, I suppose it won't take too long. There has been major developments with Type Whisper. Just recently was not even good enough for Mac, and now it's perfect. So what do you do with Type Whisper? Well, in simple terms, you speak, and the tool turns your speech into written text instantly. And it can be used for system-wide dictation, so you can dictate into different apps. Say when you write an email, it can also transcribe audio files that you might have. And the cool thing is it's super fast and super accurate. I currently use something similar to Type Whisper, but that's not locally on my computer because my computer cannot handle the data. I use a cloud-based speech-to-text tool that I can also highly recommend. This, of course, is not ideal for sensitive stuff. But if you do not have sensitive stuff and just send lots and lots of emails and you don't want to type everything, I can also highly recommend that. It's called Whisper Flow. There is a free version that you can use. So if you're not overdoing things, then the free version is totally fine. And if you want to use more of it, then you can also buy some kind of like a year-long subscription. I think that's what they have. I think also for a month, but I have it for a year. I can also highly recommend that. It's super cool. Maybe, I hope it works. My computer is heavily working hard with all of what's going on right now, but we can give it a try and see. So I now dictate and it takes down the text instantly. Yeah, you cannot see that, but that's like I dictate and it's right there. As I say it, as I speak it, it's there. And that's so much faster than if you have to type everything. So that is really also a recommendation. Type Whisper, if it's for sensitive data, you want to make sure that it just runs on your computer, it doesn't leave your computer. If it's not sensitive, Whisper Flow might be a good option for you. Both are completely free, especially for Mac users. Type Whisper is really an awesome alternative. And why should you be interested in speech-to-text tools? Well, the main advantage is not only speed, speaking is much faster than typing, but also that it lowers the barrier between thinking and writing. And this can especially be helpful when you do not want to start from a blank page, for example. You start with spoken thinking and then you refine it. You already have something that's taken on paper. And then there is also a second local AI tool that I would like to suggest to you that I've seen in action many times and that I'm very impressed about, and that is Hedi. Just give me a second. Hedi AI. Hedi is an AI meeting assistant. It runs in the background on your computer and it can listen to conversations, and it then creates transcripts and summaries. So this is really, really interesting for meetings, I would say. It creates transcript summaries and it provides support during and after the meeting. So you can question your transcript, you can check it, or you can clarify things, what has been said, what was the to-do list that we discussed in the meeting, that sort of things. And this might be really interesting for you if you, like me, have very many project meetings where you produce knowledge, but the knowledge can easily get lost if nobody properly documents things that are being said. And a meeting assistant helps capture the key points, the decisions, the open questions, the follow-up actions. And it turns all of this information into awesome protocols and all the stuff that might be needed. And again, this also can reduce cognitive load. So you can really focus on the conversation and don't have to try and document everything. And if you say, ooh, but this sounds really scary related to, say, personal information and that kind of stuff, as long as you keep the data to yourself, so as long as it stays, say, on your computer, this is totally okay from a legal perspective. It's just you're not allowed to use sensitive data anywhere else where it can be processed and so on. That would be the problem. But if you really use it for yourself, then it's yours, right? It's like if you're writing along, you're also allowed to do that. And I find that voice tools, they're a good example to show that AI is moving more and more into our everyday workflows. And that brings me to the last point for today, and that is AI agents. Because AI agents take this idea one step further. They not only help us capture information, they work through tasks, and they do so on their own. So they can use files and tools on our computer. And this is the point where AI becomes less like a chatbot and more, say, like a junior digital assistant, if you will. And these AI assistants, they truly are the next big thing. I'm super convinced about that. They're the next big thing. That's the next major step in this development. And maybe you have heard of agentic AI already. Examples are, for example, Perplexity's agentic browser Comet that has been around for a while. So if you use Perplexity and have the Perplexity Pro subscription, then you can make use of, I think even without the Pro version, you can use Comet, the browser. And it's not just a browser, it's also an agentic assistant that you can use. And if you like, we can try it out in a moment. So that would be one example. Or Comet. Comet or, Comet, that's the one that I already said, or ChatGPT's agent, that's Codex, that's the one that I wanted to say, Codex. That's the one that comes with ChatGPT. And I think especially if you have a ChatGPT Pro account, then trying and working with Codex really makes a lot of sense because it's part of the package. Another tool that you might have heard is Manus. That's also very popular. And also other tools that can browse websites, read files, write code, complete tasks, and all of that. This is still relatively new and it might seem confusing at first glance. So for example, I only started exploring AI agents recently. Until lately, I thought ChatGPT's Codex, I saw it in my ChatGPT that there was this new function Codex. And as the name suggests, I thought, well, it's about coding. And since I'm not a programmer, I simply ignored this development and did not even look into it until I was told, hey, Codex is so much more than just a coding tool. This is an agent. And from what I can tell you so far, it's a good one. It's a good idea to use that agent or Comet to start working and to get a feel for what these things can do for you. And maybe I tell you a personal story just to give you the perspective of AI agents. 3.5 years ago, ChatGPT was released, and I kind of started this AI hype. And when ChatGPT was released and the hype started, initially the first, I think, 3 months, I heard about this new trend, and everybody was talking about it, but I felt, okay, but this is not for me. I don't need that kind of thing. What would I do with it? And I did not even look into it. I just totally ignored it. And then after 3 months, I realized, well, you know what? I think this is a major step. It's a major development. And if it is, then it will change how we work and how we learn. And so I suppose I should get interested and I should look into things. And I still remember that in March, about 3 months after it was released, I, for the first time, entered ChatGPT and did my first prompts there. And when I did so, I truly felt like, okay. So I was totally kind of like, I don't want to say unimpressed. It's interesting what it could do, right? It could produce language and stuff. But I did not really know what the heck I should do with this, what I would need this for. And it's the same impression that I got when I discussed this with a colleague just recently. He told me too that when he started doing workshops about AI, and he told people, well, this AI tool can write text for you, that people came back at him and said, like, yeah, why would I be interested in that? I can write text on my own. I don't need a tool to do this for me. And why am I telling you this? Because now for me, it feels pretty much the same again. The same level here with agentic AI. I do understand the importance. I do see that this is a major development that will have a huge impact on our workflow and how we work and how we understand stuff. Yet at the same time, I'm not quite sure what to do with the agent, right? So what can it do for me? And if you like, I show you two workflows of what is possible. I still think that it is a point where we might keep, an open mind and start to work with it, start to get an idea of what it does and what it could do, and just keep it somewhere at the back of your head to think along of how you actually can use AI agents, simply so that, the brain gets ready for this new development. Yeah, my suggestion is to try out Codex. Why is that? Well, if you already happen to have a ChatGPT Pro account, then Codex is part of the package. You simply install Codex onto your computer, and you have a good, simple, yet effective agent at your hands to work with and to gain first experience with. A regular chatbot, as we said, is mainly a conversational partner, and it stays normally inside the chat. It does not automatically open any files or checks anything in a folder, runs a small analysis or anything like that. An AI agent is different. An AI agent is a system that can take a goal, plan steps, use tools. It looks at the results and continues working. So it's not just answering, it's working on its own. And it's using materials from your computer. It's accessing your files. That does not mean it's magic. The best way of thinking of it is like a junior digital assistant, as I said. So an assistant that can use your computer. It can read, it can write, it can search, it can compare, and create small pieces of text, software, whatever. But of course, it still needs a clear task. It needs clear boundaries, and it needs somebody to check the results. So for example, if you ask a chatbot, what are the main debates in my research field, then it will give you a general answer based on what it knows. So based on the information that it was fed with. But if you ask an agent, you can give a way more work-oriented task. For example, here's a folder on my computer. It includes 30 PDFs of academic papers. I want you to read those papers and create a table with author, year, the main research question, the method, the samples, findings, a limitation, say. Tell me which papers I should then read first. And this is a different kind of support. The first version just gives you text, but the second version, the agent, helps you to really move through your work. And this is where AI agents might be really interesting for you and for your work. Because they can take over work for you, and you then check the output. And I'd like to illustrate how such an agent works, if that's okay with you. We could start with Perplexity's browser Comet. And to showcase to you how it works on its own, we can have the agent write a short LinkedIn post about us having this AI update session, and we can just watch what it does. So let me quickly open that, and let me see if it's here. Comet. Yes, here it is. So you should now. Oh, I'm not sure. Can you see my comment? No, you can't. Let's stop that again. Let's try it again. See if that works. Hello. Comment. Let's try this one. Ha, looks better. That looks better. So what you can see here, this is the browser. It's called Comet. And here on the side is your assistant, right? So this would be the regular browser function. I'm already logged in with my account on LinkedIn. And if I now turn on the assistant, it's like this regular window that we have for prompts and chatbots. And I could now, and I dictate this now, I could now say something like, I am currently in an AI update Zoom session where we do a test run with Comet's agent. And I want you to publish a short post on my LinkedIn account about that. So, okay. And then we send this off. And then the assistant asks to take over control, and we allow it to do that. And then we can just watch the AI agent take over control. So it came up with a draft post. I can still check if I like this or not. And if I say like, yep, looks good, then I have the agent publish this, and I'm not doing anything, right? So the agent is doing this on its own, right? So and it takes some time. So here's the text. Yep. And there it is. It's online. So it has been posted, has been published. Everything's there. We can also check that it's there. Yes, here it is. Right? So that is the agent, the assistant, as it's called here, the assistant in the Comet. This is how this one works. And if you like, then I show you a second option, this time in ChatGPT's system, Codex. And let me share that screen for this one. So we need to go to Codex. So you need to download Codex for that. And then we want to have a new chat. And you can share a project. And if it's okay with you, the idea that I thought of is something that I heard from a colleague of mine. He says he now has Comet go through his invoices that he has and take out information from the invoice so that he can then use it for tax. And I thought, well, we could try the same thing in a very small project. We can try this out. So I created a folder on my computer that includes 3 different invoices that I just photographed with my mobile phone this morning and turned into PDFs. And I want to use the file, it's this one, and give the agent access to this file. And then I'm going to say, this folder contains invoice PDFs. Please read all the PDFs and create an Excel spreadsheet with the columns date, company, and amount. For each invoice, extract the invoice date, the issuing company, and the total amount payable. Use the gross total, including VAT, if available. Enter 1 row per invoice and sort the table chronologically from oldest to newest. And if any value is unclear, do not guess, leave it blank, and add a short explanation in a notes column. All right. And then we start this. And again, we can just watch the agent do the work for us. let's see what it's doing and how long it's going to take. I already hear my computer working real hard on this one. If you like, while we wait, I can give you another example that might be interesting or useful. How about something like, I'm preparing a 20-minute presentation at a conference and I'll be talking about, say, this and that topic. You might even have a folder with different documents. Use this folder with all the documents in it and create a clear outline with 5 sections. For each section, include the main message, one example each, use spoken academic language, that sort of things. And voila, there is your presentation. If you need a specific color code, color scheme, some kind of like logos that need to be included, all of this can be done for you. So that really reduces your workload. And if this sounds interesting to you, then we can also in a moment talk about how to write a good prompt. It's not too different to how you write a good prompt in any regular AI chat. Let's just see what's going on here. Yeah, it goes through the different images. First one, and I said it's 3, and I just really just put them on my desk this morning and took a picture of them. So absolutely nothing fancy. So all 3 invoices are readable. Good. While it's doing that, let me remind you of how to write a good prompt. With an agent, a useful prompt normally has 5 parts. The first part is the goal. So what do you want at the end? The more specific, the clearer, the better it is. What is the product? Yeah, and agents always work with products. What is the product that you want to see? Second, the material. So what should the agent use? Which materials can and should it access? Is there a folder? Which folder is it? You give access to the folder and that's it. You can also give access to your entire computer, but I'm still more on the safe side. I'm not giving access to everything, but just to really specific folders. Third, the audience. Who is the product for? Is it for you? Is there a specific other target audience? That sort of things. 4, the format. So what do you actually aim at? Do you want a table, an outline, a PowerPoint presentation, a document, or something else altogether? And that was number 4. And then number 5, the boundaries. So is there anything that you don't want the agent to do? Oh, and by the way, it might make sense to include some kind of checkpoint for longer tasks. So say first have an agent inspect the files and come up with a plan, then you check if that's what you really want, and then you have the agent create the table and then turn it into a presentation, blah, blah, something like this. Just as we saw before when I used Comet to write a post and publish a post on my LinkedIn profile. You can also make it possible for your agent to work independently and do every step without asking you for permission or anything. But then you don't, you lose control over what's going on. And the question is that really what you want or not? So you might want to have a couple of steps in between just to be on the safe side. And this is also useful for another reason. It takes time for the agent to do the work, as you can see, and you don't want to waste your time and then find out, well, this is actually not what I wanted. And it's not only time, it's also tokens. Yeah, you're using up tokens, kind of like the money. And you don't want to waste tokens on something that is then rubbish that you cannot use, right? So even with ChatGPT Pro accounts, you cannot endlessly work with an agent. So there are limitations, and you might want to make sure that things work out the way that you want it to do. So this is done. Let's check what that looks like. And this is just a preview, but it worked. So it's the date and it's from old to new. That worked. It gives the company, Yes. It gives the amount. And since there were no issues, nothing in the notes here. So pretty nice, I would say. That's exactly what we wanted to have. Good, excellent. So that nice stop. This again. So if you're now interested in working with an agent yourself, I suggest that you start small. And if you like the outcomes, you can always then scale up. You can learn as you go. And also keep it somewhere at the back of your head if you're just like me, not totally certain of what you're actually supposed to be doing with this. Maybe you can still try out a couple of things and see how that goes, and then maybe ideas grow from there. And one more important aspect maybe that I would also like to point out, remember that an agent uses your computer. So it makes changes, it can make changes. That's the point of an agent. It works on its own, on your computer and on your behalf. And this is, I think, why you really need guardrails. So keep your agent inside a limited workspace. Do not give it access to everything and anything. Be careful with tools that you work with. You probably have already heard of OpenClaw. I put that in the chat as well. OpenClaw is famous, a super famous AI agent. Probably the most famous one, but it's super dangerous. You might have heard of all the horror stories related to people using OpenClaw. It's considered not safe to use for regular users at that point. And as I said, maybe you have heard the horror stories of cases where people used OpenClaw and said like, oh yeah, organize my files on the computer. And then instead of organizing the files, deleted pretty much everything that was on there. Or another person who said like, put my photos somewhere in folders and organized stuff there. And yeah, then all the photos were deleted. And I think here it's good to play it safe, better safe than sorry, and stay away from OpenClaw, at least at that point. So using the two options that I shared with you, that I showed you, they're good to go, I would say, but OpenClaw really sounds very scary. And you don't want to be one of those stories that other people then talk about. So always approve important actions yourself, I would say, especially when it's about sending messages, deleting files, submitting forms, buying anything, of course, or changing any official records or so. Yeah, and so much for agents at that point. And that's what I had planned for today. The hour is gone, so let me bring everything back to the big picture. In a nutshell, today was all about one central shift, namely AI moving from chatbots to working systems. And we started with the question of AI infrastructure and the Fable 5 case. And it became clear how AI tools are not only technical products anymore, they are part of a way larger political, legal system. And if access to a model can suddenly change, then AI use is also a question of reliability, sovereignty, and eventually, I guess, risk management. And we then looked into Mistral and Vibe as an example of European AI that might be interesting. And the key idea was not European automatically means safer, better, or anything like that. That would be too simple. But the more useful question would be, could a European AI system be or become a good option, a good alternative when data control and sovereignty matters? And then we talked about local AI, and this might be especially relevant for you, especially if you have sensitive material. Then this is a perfect option now, something that wasn't the case a couple of months ago. Yeah, and then we looked at Type Whisper, at Hedi as examples of local AI, and where it's working with spoken context. And that might be interesting for you. And finally, we looked at AI agents, Comet in particular, and Codex. And here the shift becomes very visible, where agents can work through steps independently and do stuff for you. And it shows that AI is becoming more relevant exactly where you work is complex, where it's time-consuming, document-heavy. Then this might be a useful new option. Yeah, but still at the same time, the questions around data, privacy, access, reliability, and human control are becoming, I would say, more important, not less important. So my practical recommendation at this point would be try things out, but maybe start small, and be smart about what you do. If you have access to ChatGPT, then try out Codex. If you have perplexity, download the browser, Comet, and give that a try and see how you like that. And you might want to look into Mistral, see how that is. You might want to try out Type Whisper and Hedi and see if you find that interesting. And you do not need to try out everything. You don't have to master everything immediately. The most important step, I would say, is to develop a good sense of what kind of tool fits for you and your tasks. And the mindset I would like to share with you so that you can take it along from today is to every now and then ask yourself, what is the right AI environment for my specific tasks, my specific data, and me? Yeah, and that brings me to the end of what I had to share. I would like to thank you very much for joining this AI update session. I hope it gave you a useful orientation. I hope you enjoy experimenting. I hope you stay curious. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. So thank you very much. And if you still have time and are interested, without the recording then going on, in sharing ideas of what you do with agents, I'd love to hear what you do. Otherwise, I will stop the recording at that point.